thank you for attending today's session. This is the ExChange Wales webinar, which is the fourth and final webinar in the conference series on learning disabilities, named Being Seen, Heard and Valued. This conference series has been going on throughout the whole of October. All of the resources from the conference, including webinar recordings, podcasts, videos and online resources, can be found on the ExChange Wales website. There will be a link in the chat box. While you wait, please use your mobile phones and scan the QR code, which I will show you in a moment, to let us know what is your dream job. And if you could do any job, what would it be? And we will go back to this a little bit later on. So like I said, I'm going to bring up the QR code now, and if you wouldn't mind filling that in before we make a start. Okay, so we've got a few responses. So somebody wants to be a social worker, work at Walt Disney World Primary School, LSA, charity-led, arts therapist, bake-off judge. Okay, we haven't had that response before. That's a new one for us, so thank you for responding to that. Property manager, that's come up a couple of times when we've delivered these sessions online and in person. Recruitment consultant, property manager, like I've mentioned. Fabulous. Well, thank you all for your responses. I'm just going to head back now to the presentation. My name is Geraint Jones-Griffiths. I am the lead ambassador for the Engage to Change project. I am in paid employment working for our lead partner, Learning Disability Wales. I have also been working with Andrew Meek and Dr. Lisa Vinia, who are my colleagues with me online this afternoon. And they are both researchers from the National Centre for Mental Health at Cardiff University. I am the honorary research associate with them at Cardiff University. My role is to make sure the project legacy reflects the stories of people with lived experience, and Andrew and Lisa helps with looking at the figures and statistics throughout the whole of Engage to Change. We've worked very closely between the three of us to write accessible results, talk to young people and employers, and we have given a number of presentations such as this online and in person, and have also chaired several conferences on a national and international level. This workshop or webinar today is about the partnership work and engaging with young people on the Engage to Change project. We have to know that this project is not supporting young people anymore, so influencing local government and to speak to young people and parents or carers about employment as a real opportunity for the future. This is a very important project for me that has had a huge impact on my life as a person with autism. So before we get started this presentation, we asked you to tell us what your dream job was, and thank you for your responses. Our point here is that at some point in your life, you were probably asked what your dream job would be. Very few young people who have a learning disability or with autism are asked this question. They are not asked about employment and their future, and the expectations around employment are lower for them. There is not equality of opportunity for a young person with a learning disability. A dream job might be harder to think about because the opportunity and experiences they have are not always the same as the opportunities are sometimes we receive. So what is Engage to Change? The Engage to Change project was set up to look at the problem of employment for young people with learning disabilities. Only 4.8% of adults with learning disabilities aged 18 to 64 are actually in employment. This has recently got worse. That is roughly less than 1 out of every 10 young people. The fact that these statistics show that the employment rate is getting lower is really very worrying. This clearly has an impact not only on people's lives, but also on social care and health services. Here in Wales, we know that the lack of transition support is a huge barrier for us all. Support from education into adult life, especially employment, is something that needs to be dramatically improved. The Engage Change project was a 7-year partnership programme. It aimed to help young people who have learning disabilities and or with autism to raise their employment skills and enter paid employment. Engage Change was later split into 2 elements. The main project, which offered support and job coaching to help young people gain paid placements, paid experience and paid employment in their communities. The second pathway was supported internships. For the main Engage Change project, there was open referral, no wrong door approach, so to speak, but young people had to be not in employment, education or training, and we call this NEET. And the eligibility criteria aim to help transition into employment for those with the most significant barriers. Over the life of Engage to Change, the project has worked with over 1,300 young people, with a total overall rate of employment success at 41%. I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague, Andrea.
Thanks, Geraint. So the slide now is just a little bit about what Geraint mentioned about Engage to Change. So Engage to Change focused on providing supported employment to people with learning disabilities. But what is supported employment? So it's really, really important to distinguish between supported employment and employment support, because they are not the same thing. So if you move on to the next slide for me, slide 5. Thank you. So supported employment is a very specific model of employment support, and it is called supported because it typically involves job coaching in the workplace. And in the UK, there is a national framework for supported employment, and we have a national qualification for job coaches. So it's a really robust model. Supported employment is a really successful model for working with people who have learning disabilities, and there's a 5-stage kind of set up to it that has the notion that anyone can be supported into employment if the job is right and if good support is provided. And this model pays equal attention not only to finding a job, but also supporting job retention. And in this model, a one-to-one job coach supports young people from preparation and vocational profiling to looking for a job and then learning it in the workplace, and also helping them keep that job. And this is often called place, train and maintain approach. So the job coaches also do kind of wider and a more kind of whole system approach with this, because they support families and they support employers as well. And it's a very much a needs-led approach to supporting people into real jobs. Now, this should start early, ideally from around age 14, to make sure that young people can have meaningful work experiences, because what we know from Engage to Change is that experience matters, and it matters that young people have those experiences to decide what they want to do, but also what jobs are not suitable for them. Ideally, supported employment should always achieve the outcome of paid employment, where people have the opportunity to be in an equal job with equal wages with exactly the same terms and conditions as all other employees. Every person on the Engage to Change project was allocated dedicated job coach support. And it's worth noting that supported employment is not just for people with learning disabilities or autistic people, but also for any person who may need that extra support to help them get, learn or keep a job. Thanks, Geraint. So our project overall achieved a 41% employment rate. And as Geraint said earlier, the national or the English average is thought to be around 4.8% of young people going into work. So it achieved quite high results. But what is a good job for people with learning disabilities and autistic young people? You know, what did they tell us that they wanted to do? And there are still so many misconceptions around what people with learning disabilities can do. So the answer to this is really individual, and each person had their own interests and preferences when it came to employment. And that's why it's really, really important to fit each job to the person, and not just kind of take a job and try and fit the person to that, because that doesn't work. And sometimes this involves thinking and operating outside of the box. You know, young people may need help to think about the types of jobs they would like and the options that are available. So when people say they'd like to work in an office, you know, actually, what does that mean? You know, Geraint, Elisa and I all work in an office, and we all do very different jobs. So what does working in an office mean to people? And in the past, job opportunities were really, really limited for people with learning disabilities. And we've seen a much broader range of jobs gained by people in recent years. And here are some of the ones that came through Engage to Change. And the top line is really interesting here on this slide, which says any other roles, because it was the largest category with about half of all the young people going into this one. And we really struggled with this because as researchers, we tried to categorize it. But actually we realized that it should be a category in itself, because any other role represents real choice and real individuality among job roles for people. So this kind of lack of us being able to categorize it was really positive, because it just shows the wide variety of jobs that people went into, and the fact that individuals' choices were really taken into account. Elisa.
Thank you, Andrea. So the project achieved an unemployment rate of 41%, but this took a strong partnership approach, which covered the whole of Wales. Engage to Change was funded by the National Lottery Community Fund, and supported by the Welsh Government. The project overall received over 10 million in funding. The project was led by Learning Disability Wales, who oversaw the project as a whole. We, at the National Centre for Mental Health at Cardiff University, we were responsible of the overall evaluation of the project, including ensuring that the voices of young people with learning disabilities were included in research and dissemination of results. We had two large supported employment agencies, Elite and Agoriat, and both agencies provided needs-led support by job coaches training to national occupational standards. They also collected data in real time for us, which meant that the information served the purpose for both reviewing the service provided through Engage to Change and also providing data for the research team. So this was made sure that the data were comprehensive and also needs led and timely. So we could kind of give live responses to how the project was going, and that also informed the research. DFN Project Search worked with us to set up the first supported internship sites across Wales, which was at Cardiff University. The partnership was supported by Always People First, which is the united voices of self-advocacy groups and people with learning disability in Wales. It is the only national members-led organization that represents the voice of people with learning disabilities. They were key partners in the evaluation and monitoring of the project, making sure that people with learning disabilities were listened to. So this partnership approach worked because it allowed for equality of opportunity and support across the whole country. It meant that advertising, signposting, and referral into the project was much more accessible for young people. Having the voices of people with learning disabilities included meant that the project was needs-led and was centrally focused on improving outcomes for them. It also meant that we had good basis for research data for influencing and informing the Welsh Government. Over to you, Geraint.
Thanks, Elisa. So the next slide now we're going to go to, and this will go back into Mentimeter now. So I'll skip the slide. So it may not come up straight away on your phone when you first get into Menti, but we'll come to that in a second. So the two questions I'm going to ask you is this: what is good about partnership working to you, and what is your top tip for partnership working? So we've had lots of responses. For me, one the best ones I think you said is a reduce of burnout, making sure we're working too much overload. Having a second pair of eyes. I quite like that one, having a second pair of eyes. That kind of goes well. Somebody said earlier, thinking outside the box, sharing ideas, multiple sources of ideas, and just basically working co-productively and working collaboratively. So with the suggestions everyone have said, can you please vote now for your top tip to what you think people have voted? Perhaps we've got good communication, sharing good practice, listening, being open to change, communication, open communication, quite a lot on communication, which is really good. You don't often see that. Transparency and clear communication, compromise, transparency, yep, absolutely. Communicate openly and honestly. Co-working won't work if you are not honest and open to criticism. Being accessible, yep. So a lot of our work is to do a lot with easy read or plain English, because our evaluation forum with Engage Change told us that our presentations wasn't the most accessible. And then we had to adapt to the way that we work to make sure that people can understand. So accessibility, communication is absolutely key. Listening and learning, absolutely. Flexibility of working with others, organizations open to feedback. Yep, absolutely. That's the way that we have worked within the team.
So thinking about partnership, so right from the beginning at the project in 2016, we knew that we needed help from people with lived experience of learning disabilities to ensure good practice. We have been lucky on this project to have the evaluation forum with members of Always People First, and this was invaluable to us as researchers. They were very clear with what they told us they wanted to see. We also originally had a group of project ambassadors who were spread through Wales. Their job was to champion supported employment, job coaching, and engagement in the project. During COVID, unfortunately, we lost these positions, but the project maintained a lead ambassador, Garant, who worked as a paid member of staff across Engage to Change and with us at the university. He has been a huge influence and had a huge influence on this work and on the legacy of the Engage to Change project. So this slide shows some of the key points made by the evaluation groups that we used to adapt and improve the supported employment provision across the project as we went along. So to give an example in practical terms, we had a lot of discussion around the low number of women referred onto Engage to Change. People were concerned by this and thought we should do better. So when we met with the people from the forum, they clearly said that we should have, as a partnership, we should have done something about it. So it was during COVID. So what we did is we organized, as a partnership, event for women in the workplace, so that we could kind of increase the awareness and improve the engagement of women into the project. And I would say that we didn't really, there's still an imbalance. There was still an imbalance, but we were successfully recruiting a bit more women through those engagement events. Also, we looked to definition that job coaches were using in eligibility at times, because basically what happened is that some people were stayed on the waiting list for too long. So there were people that were recruited on the Engage to Change, and they had to wait in order to receive the support from the project. So job coaches, while people were waiting, the project created these job clubs where actually people could engage and develop skills while waiting to get then job coach support through the project. Over to you, Andrea.
So the one thing that people with learning disabilities were really, really clear on from the start of this whole project was the importance of accessibility. And as, practitioners and as researchers, very little that we do is often truly accessible for people. So people told us that when we were supporting them, particularly around employment, that we needed to make sure information was easy read and was presented in a way that was accessible to everybody. So as well as kind of looking at how we collected data and how we interviewed and analysed people, we wanted to make sure that all of our research outputs were accessible and meaningful. So not only for supported employment policymakers and practitioners, but for all the young people that took part in the project as well. And the good practice here is easy read. So we worked with Geraint and we worked with people on the project to turn our academic journals and our kind of fairly complicated writing into easy read reports. And that's a really good kind of method for practitioners to make sure what they write and what they want to kind of tell people is accessible. Young people decided what it was important for them to know and other young people to know. and we worked together with them to write some scripts and film videos and do some blogs that was presented by them, so that there was a more kind of peer-led approach to sharing good practice around employment. Additionally, Geraint has done, lots and lots across social media, and we're trying to present accessible results as a team wherever we can. So in this way, we've been able to create a kind of more accessible understanding of what support employment is and how it can help people. Elisa.
So, and yes, so as academics, we had to challenge ourselves. So, the language that we use is overcomplicated and technical and generally not accessible. So in this slide, you can see that there are like easy, adjustment that we could all adapt and adopt to kind of make the communication more accessible for everyone. And sometimes we really say things, sometimes today, for instance, I had 8 emails and half of them were probably not necessary, so there are easy measures that we could all take. So for instance, using short sentences of 12 words and less, or avoid jargon, acronyms and abbreviation, and question ourselves as well about, are the people that actually are listening to me in this moment know about these acronyms, know about these words? Make the text font larger, so minimum 14. Avoid the fancy fonts and design. What we really learn is not to use percentages, because some people, don't understand percentages, and that's fine. Use 4 out of 10 people, for instance, instead, so that, you can represent in your head what it does mean. Images should represent each sentence where possible, and so use photo symbols if possible. And we can learn this and challenge ourselves on a day-to-day basis. So and think about the implication of inaccessible communication. So how many people do not apply for jobs in our companies because our job description and recruitment practices are not accessible? Think about policy and procedures. Could they be better worded so that are more accessible? Think about how you communicate with your teams. Is that accessible enough? What's in the implication of a complicated communication? And also, challenge ourselves in all the presentation that we do. And, as a team, we are still learning. We are still not perfect, but we like to challenge ourselves. And, and so that's why we all constantly ask the opinion of Geraint and all the people with lived experience of a learning disability that work with us. Over to you, Geraint.
Thanks, Elisa. Okay, this next slide is a short video clip we would like to show you. And this is from one of our research feedback videos. This was written and filmed by some of the young people, which you can see here. And just to note as well, I should mention this earlier, that when you filled in Mentimeter earlier, your response is made anonymous. And we would like to share your opinions from today's session on our social media. If you have any concerns, please drop us a message in the chat. We found that the ExChange project offered employment opportunities of significant length to enable young people to be ready for work. Significant means for 6 months or more.
Within the ExChange project, 443 young people had a significant experience of a work placement or a supported internship. This is important. It shows that young people need longer placements and experience to enable them to become work ready.
The more experience young people get, the easier it is for them to find a job.
Experience alone is not enough. The support of the job coach in the workplace is helpful for those who need it.
The support of the job coach should be person-centered and based on a person's needs. The support should be individual to help young people develop the right skills for them.
This shows that there is a need for good quality work experience with job coach support while young people are at school and in college, so that we can start thinking about the real opportunities for the future. The research suggests that this alone will lead to better than usual rates of employment for young people with a learning disability if experiences are organised and properly funded.
Significant employment experience of 6 months or more, such as having paid placements and supported internships, gave our highest rate of employment.
In this project, the placements were individually matched to young people in real workplaces doing real work with job coaches support. This is what works.
Colleges are now offering young people supported internships through the new Pathway 4. This means young people spend time in the workplace rather than in the classroom to learn vocational skills. We need to ensure that newly developed Pathway 4 supported internship schemes provided through colleges are of the highest quality and are based on what works.
We believe that young people who have a learning disability or autism need the right job match and the right support, because when this happens, we know how much young people can achieve in the job that they want.
We can work.
We want to work.
Support us to work.
We found that the engagement.
Thanks, Gary. I really like Tom's kind of political power move at the end of that video. It always kind of really brings it home, the message that, you know, actually people do want to work and they should be supported to work. But why is listening and learning from people we work with important as practitioners? You know, and I think it comes back to accessibility. So this slide shows the difference between kind of traditional outputs, what we would normally put out as practitioners, and accessible co-produced outputs. And the same key messages are disseminated in both of these kind of halves of this slide. But the ones on the left-hand side are much more accessible, and they also have a more immediate impact. So one of our videos had around 2,000 views in a month, whereas, you know, we are still waiting for that kind of academic journal type article to be published. And working this way and making sure that we get our results and what we know out immediately has meant that we can be better informed and we can better work with policymakers to try and kind of pass on our messages. And it means that, you know, the messages are not only reaching academics and policymakers, but also they're accessible to the young people for who the project has an impact. And it's also allowed us to engage and work as part of a team directly with people with learning disabilities to raise research skills for people who were interested in research, and to talk about why we do what we do, particularly in a university setting, which is a place that people with learning disabilities are really typically excluded from. And it shows that participant engagement and good practice with co-production are really beneficial to everybody who's involved, particularly around supported employment. Having those really open and honest conversations and those accessible pathways really benefits everybody, families, employers, and young people. We've been really lucky as researchers to have been granted an extension to work on impact only from this project. So until the end of this year, we will continue with this. But, you know, as researchers and practitioners, we need to be thinking outside the box and ensuring what we do makes a real difference to the populations we work with. There's a real trend around resources and courses at the moment, but, you know, that's not sometimes directly working with people and listening to what they want and what they need from services. So we need to be more focused on people's voices, particularly around supported employment. Geraint?
Thanks, Andrea. So the project stopped taking I'm on my slide, guys. Okay, I had a slight blank moment then. So the project stopped taking referrals back in May last year, but we are still working to make sure the lessons and work from Engage to Change continue to exist today. This includes us looking at what support young people or their families still need now, or might need in the future for employment. So we have 2 questions. You can use Mentimeter here, or we are happy to discuss this as a group. But what I would suggest is, because there's quite a few of you on the call today, which is absolutely brilliant, I think if we do this through Mentimeter, if that's okay with you all. So the first question is, as you can see on your screen, how can we make sure we are doing true co-production and listening and learning from each other? And the second question is, how can we promote the employment of people with learning disabilities and with autism in our teams and or institutions? So you have all said, be open to everyone, be more inclusive. Yep, I totally agree. If you're not being inclusive, or you're not working with people with lived experiences, then you're not really doing true co-production, in my opinion. Asking questions of and listening to the people we work with, absolutely. Listen to everyone's voice, every voice matters. Yeah, that's quite a powerful statement there, and it's absolutely true. Ask people, totally, like I said, working with those individuals, making sure that you're listening and learning from them, including the individual at all stages, absolutely. Like we said earlier, transition is a huge barrier, and do it from the start. I love that statement. That's really powerful. Again, try new things and be open to being wrong. Correct. Sometimes I say things that are not always a great idea, but then somebody from the team might say an idea that's similar to mine, but put it on a different angle. So it's really important that, you know, that you all work as a team. Open and consistent communication, absolutely clear communication. Yep. So this goes back to accessibility and being more inclusive. This one being the QR code. So ensure people with experiences are in position of influence from the start. Absolutely. Your view is not the only view or necessarily the right one. Yeah, exactly. If you're not entirely sure about the learning disability that a person has or had, ask them about it. Absolutely. Don't go over their heads and ask someone else. I completely agree with that statement. And I don't think there's an argument, but there's definitely some sort of misunderstanding on what a learning disability is, or the term of a learning disability or learning difficulty. All People First made a brilliant position statement back either last or the year before on what their members think of a true identity as a learning disability. There are no wrong answers, only ideas that can be built upon. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for your responses. I'm going to hand you now back to Andrea.
So this is about improving employment rates for people with learning disabilities. So here are some top tips from the project. And it's all about creating opportunities and make sure that there is equality for all. We know what works. Every one of us as practitioners should have had training in equality and diversity, but how many are really, really proactive at supporting this in the workplace? You know, for example, the Equality Act applies in relation to people with a learning disability and employment. There's no difference there. So it is a person's right to ask for reasonable adjustment. And it's a really common misconception that these apply once in work, but this is wrong. You know, reasonable adjustments can begin at the job development stage or at the recruitment stage. So for example, it should be possible to ask for an accessible application form, and this should include an easy read version if requested. So I think we have to get used to offering those easy read versions, and we need to be working with our HR departments to do that. I think one of the worst questions to ask when thinking about reasonable adjustments is, what do you need? Because that's a huge question, particularly for somebody who may not have much experience of employment, or it's their first employment in that type of workplace. And it's too big. It can be difficult to know what's on offer and what is possible. So much better practice is to be having that kind of open dialogue and having a menu of reasonable adjustments to start conversations. And just remembering that reasonable adjustments for people with learning disabilities, as with all people, should be individual and should be needs-led and determined and defined by what that person needs to do the job. And we also need to remember that we are not the experts in learning disabilities. People with learning disabilities are the experts. So listening to them needs to come first. And finally, we should all by now be leading by example. So, this is a learning disability webinar, and we all have an interest in learning disability. But, it's asking, does your team employ people with learning disabilities? And if it doesn't, why doesn't it? What's stopping your team or your department or your business doing this? And I think that's something to take away and think about. Elisa?
So what is the legacy of the Engage to Change project? So here in this slide, there is a long list of legacy, and it's not even comprehensive what the project has achieved. But the main point is that we as a team, we are asking for a national job coaching strategy for Wales to make sure that job coach support is not limited, is offered to everyone, is not limited to like a group, a restricted group of people. We are also, over the years, we ask for more jobs in the NHS and local authorities, because large institutions, they have more capacity in the way that they can actually employ people with learning disabilities, and they can job carve and create jobs that suit the business and the person as well. The Engage to Change brought support internship to Wales with funding. So before the Engage to Change, there were no supported internship in Wales. Now there are 20 programs running across Wales and being delivered in collaboration with local authorities, health boards, small and large businesses. We have been working with colleague Cambry to develop quality standards and guidelines for delivery of supported internship programs. There is a great focus on apprenticeship, generally speaking, in Wales. So we worked closely with Welsh Government to have supported apprenticeship in Wales. And so there is a provision of supported apprenticeship both in South and North Wales. And they have a job coach support, so they are more inclusive of people with learning disabilities. Job coaching is now a priority and in a Welsh employability plan, and Engage to Change has been included as good practice in several reports. We are also working to make sure that experience counts and that the entry assessment for qualification and courses are fairer, because this is something that we challenge in many different roles. So we really and strongly believe that as a university, we should employ more people with learning disabilities, because we could see how beneficial our research has been thanks to their contribution. And I think that despite having worked on this for 8 years, we feel like we have just begun, and there is still work to do to make sure this legacy continues and grows. Where we will continue to make sure we work directly with people with learning disabilities to achieve this. Over to you, Garrett.
Thank you, Elisa. Right. We also have an Engage to Change legacy video, which is filmed with young people as case studies and outlines the different pathways into employment that are currently available here in Wales. We won't play this clip today as it is quite long, about 10-15 minutes long. But this is available on our Engage to Change website and YouTube channel. So if you do have 10 or 15 minutes spare, please do have a look at it. I'm quite biased because we're all involved in this, but it's a really good video to watch if you've got 15 minutes to spare. We also have lots more information which we have filmed in an accessible way with our participants on Engage to Change. And like I said, this is involving every young person on the project, or the big bulk of them, because we were really clear that we want to work with young people as they have come through the project. And like Andrew mentioned earlier, they are the experts, not us. So here's our contact details on your screen. Diolch yn fawr, thank you so much for listening to us today. Please look on our social media platforms. You'll often see me on a rant on either LinkedIn or Twitter. There are plenty more report materials which we haven't even highlighted today, because we've just covered so much, especially in the legacy partner of Engage to Change. I have been working very closely with the research team to create more accessible resources for young people rather than academic journal papers, because in my opinion, nobody ever reads them. So please take a look at these. And thank you once again to ExChange Wales, especially to Sian and Dan for inviting us to come along to speak to you this afternoon. Like I mentioned, contact details are here if we can help you with anything. And Sian and Dan, if you're happy for us to take questions from the chat. So first question comes from Mike. Mike, thanks for the question. So Mike has asked us, a great thing that a lot of people learn disabilities is having a disability passport. Which is very, I've lost another question coming in, which is a helpful and clear document of what you need, reasonable adjustments, because we've highlighted that earlier. Do you both have any comments on reasonable adjustments in health passports?
I think that yeah, you're absolutely right. A disability passport is really useful. There's a couple of versions around at the minute, and I think that one of our recommendations would be that the Welsh Government needs to provide something that's standard for across the whole of Wales, so that everybody has there's equality of this for people. There's a few pilots, I think, happening at the moment as well to see what's the best one. And I think it's just about making sure that there's an easy read and accessible version are there as well.
Thanks, and go on, Lisa.
If I may add also the importance of having a job coach supporting the individual to complete the passport and to keep it updated, because what we found is that sometimes it's really difficult especially for young people, to think about the job that they want to do. And so I think it's about also working with schools, special school and mainstream school as well, to raise their aspiration and allow and support them to think about what they can do and focus on what they can and not what they can't do. That's the main thing to me, and also inform them about reasonable adjustment, because the employers are legally required about providing adjustment for what is useful to them specifically. So yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Another question for Mike as well. Is there a standard out there that support employers to be more disability friendly when applying for roles? Now, if I'm honest, Mike, from my personal experiences, job application forms are still not accessible. I used to line manage the project ambassadors, which Lisa and Andrew mentioned earlier. One of our ambassadors, he was brilliant on his CV, and I could tell he had the potential, but he declined the role because he didn't want to be in front of a panel, in his interview panel. So what I done was took him to his local supermarket and I held the interview there. So it was a more relaxed atmosphere and he absolutely excelled. So to my sort of point, Meg, really, that employers are not really disability friendly to the most that they could be. Alice and Andrew, is there anything that you want to add as well? Okay, well, we wait for Joanne to come in. Joanne did ask in the chat earlier, are there particular employers who are successfully employing and have retained their learning disability employees longer term that we are aware of?
Yeah, there's quite a few, across Wales that have both been involved in Engage to Change and have been, and haven't been involved in Engage to Change. There's a really growing population of people with learning disabilities in Wales that have now had their jobs and are continuing to hold down jobs really successfully. I think the thing to watch there is that people are supported to progress and to to learn. So if somebody gets a job at 20 years old, are they being supported to progress and learn new skills and keep that job interested for them as they kind of grow and what they want out of employment changes. At the minute, older people, I think, are not supported well enough to think about jobs. The Engage to Change focus was on 19 to 25-year-olds, but there's a whole population then of older people where the support needs to come in for them really, and it's about thinking about what they want to do and what they want to do in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, and how we can support them to achieve that.
Another one from Mike as well. It's not much questions, it's really what he's doing. So Mike knows that they're using one in Neath Port Talbot County Council, and it'd be great to see others that would follow suit. I think is a really good point. So Joanna's point was, how realistic is the ask for more jobs in the NHS, local authorities, probably public sectors, that support or that you support employment access in the current climate? I know our local authority will not have any additional funding in the next financial year, and to be honest, Joanna, that's right across the board. We are seeing that a lot, and current services are expected to suffer. Is there any comments you both want to make on that?
Yes, I think it is about focusing on cost saving, because I think that people with learning disabilities could actually be placed in roles that actually are saving more skilled workers time. So for instance, admin. So we got a great experience at Cardiff University at the National Centre for Mental Health. We have colleagues who have been through the Engage to Change project and are working as admin, and doing also like research type of quite complex tasks, and it's saving a lot of time. So for instance, we have one colleague that is now supporting a PhD student to do some double screening review. And this is really time consuming. So I think that having a person with a learning disabilities that is working across a large team and doing all those tasks that they excel at can really be supportive of a wide range of staff members. So in that respect, I think that the NHS and local authorities, as well as large employers, should really see it as a cost-saving exercise. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that there's a new report out at the end of last week, which is England based, but had some cost benefit in it. And I think it was for every pound invested, there's a £1.17 saving, which when you talk about it as single pounds doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds and potentially millions of pounds in places like the NHS, it's that we kind of have to think about the bigger picture, really. So I think that it is realistic to ask the NHS and local authorities to be more inclusive as employers. And but it's how we get them engaged and how we sell this to them, I think is the difficult part.
One final question they'd like to ask us.
I can see that Mike has said that he uses a particular version in his workplace of the passport. So, if anybody has any other versions or they wanted to share some versions, then, please pop some links in the chat for those. Kathleen?
From what I hear, Exchange to Change has ended effectively taking referrals from last May 2023, actually. So are there any plans to start that up again, really, and give other young people the opportunities that you've been giving?
Unfortunately, no, Kathleen. So the project was due to really finish in 2023, but the lottery decided to give us another sort of rollover on extra funding. So an 8-year sort of funding project is sort of unheard of in the third sector. The answer to your question, no, unfortunately, we're just looking at the policy now. The project is due to end completely at the end of next month. And then after that, then that'll more or less be well, I say the end of Engage to Change. Obviously, we would still like to do a lot more with the policy and the research and the legacy side of Engage to Change. But like Elisa mentioned earlier, though, yes, it's been 8 years, but we're only just really scratching the surface, and there is a lot more work to cover. But in answer to your question, Kathleen, no, after the end of next month, the project will be finished with. Andrea, got anything else to add?
We are trying to work with the Welsh Government to put, to make sure that what we learned from the Engage to Change project is listened to and is carried on. I think one of the worst feelings is when you've done something that's 8 years and you can see what works, is for is to turn around and then say, okay, well, we'll do a pilot, and we've just spent 8 years researching this. there is a new call from the National Lottery, which is specifically looking at disability and green careers, and looking at the supported model around green careers, but it's not specific to learning disabilities. And that's just gone through the first part of the call there. But again, that's not Pan Wales. That will be there'll be successful partnerships in some areas that will get that, depending on who's successful in the next round. But that's I think the next best thing. But while we're in place, we are continuing to work with the Welsh Government to just kind of push for needs-led job coaching to be available for any person that needs it to kind of keep and maintain their jobs.
So in your demise, really, can I ask, where would you suggest signposting young people for anything similar to what you've been offering, needs-led job coaching? Is there anything?
The video, the pathways video that Geraint mentioned at the end, that shows the current pathways that are available to young people. It's the good thing about Engage to Change was that it was open door and it was open referral. Now we've gone back to a situation where it's up to practitioners or parents or young people themselves to look for what they need. Up to 19 Jobs Growth Wales Plus should support with job coaching. It should be available. But if you want anything specific, please get in touch with us and we'll see if we can support and help you, show you where to go from here if you've got a specific question. We'd be happy to help.
Elisa?
And I think it's just to add that we are trying to map supported employment in Wales, so that to have like a interactive map and so that people can use to see what is available in the area where they live. So watch out for it, and hopefully it will be ready for in the next 2 months or so.
I just want to, as we're all filling in your responses, thank you, Joanna, for your point as well. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we are scratching the surface. Your question, only a quick one. How realistic is it that the continuity of our core work is going to survive into the next 10 years? Personally, it's a lack of funding everywhere. Whether we'll still be in jobs, I honestly don't know. Obviously, my lead ambassador post will go when the Engage Change finishes. Andrew and Lisa, whether you'll still have contracts in Cardiff Uni, we just don't know, unfortunately. But thank you all for your questions, and I once again I'd like to thank Sian, Dan, and the whole team of ExChange Wales for inviting us to speak along this afternoon. I hope you've all enjoyed it.